and any short grain white rice will do. What makes the sushi rice, in most cases, is that the rice actually comes from Asian countries as opposed to other product. And another difference is the sushi grade rice will have been rinsed and rinsed and rinsed and rinsed over and over and over again before packaging, which means it's got a little less starch. And the whole idea is to wash the starch off. So if you Googled sushi rice recipes, you would come up with probably 1,000 different recipes, but they all contain the same elements. It's just how much of this and how much of that is only the differences you'll find. So any recipe will tell you to first rinse the rice. And this rice has been rinsed. You can do it simply in a colander. I'm going to walk around the kitchen here. You can simply do it in a colander. If you don't have something like this at home, any finer mesh so that the rice doesn't fall through the holes will work. And I'm going to do a stovetop because a lot of people just don't simply have a rice cooker at home. So, cold pan, no heat, rinsed rice. I've got a little under 4 cups in here. I'm going to do about half. I'm going to do about 2 cups of rice. I haven't turned on any heat. And the question I get asked often is, just a little bit of water. Thank you. The question I get asked often is, well, what's the ratio? Chef, is there a sushi rice ratio, rice to water? And it's hard to say. It definitely depends on the pan that you have. But there is a rule of thumb, and it is 1-to-1 ratio. However, sushi rice should be on the dry side. Yeah, should be on the dry side. And so it more or less almost 7 out of 10 times when I've made it on the stovetop, it ends up being less water than rice, actually, which surprises people. But whether you have a measuring cup or at home or not actually doesn't matter either, because I'm going to show you a simple way to gauge. Haven't turned any heat on. I'm going to flatten out the rice about as even in the pan as possible. Try to pick a pan that's wide and flat. I'm going to pour cold water in and saturate that rice. Remember, it has been rinsed. And I'm going to put my hand in there and I'm going to gauge the depth of the water. And the water goes about halfway up my fingers. So for instance, draw this closer. I get my pan level, put my hand in there. Water's about halfway up my fingers. And be on the safe side. Again, I'm just not even really exact measurements at all. Just to be on the safe side, I'm going to add just a little more. Put it on my burner and high heat immediately. Now, if you have a Teflon pan, definitely helps. But if you don't, because a lot of people don't at home, a regular saute pan will do. Get a wooden, high heat plastic, rubber spatula or a wooden spoon, because now what's going to happen is, since you started in a cold pan, it's going to have a tendency to stick just by nature of cooking methods. Everybody knows to start with a hot pan, but in this procedure you don't. So it's going to stick to the bottom as this heats up. So I'm going to make sure I get it not thoroughly stirred, because you don't want to stir around the starch. I'm just going to gently make sure that it's not stuck. And every time I do give it a stir, I'm going to try to level it off again so that I don't really get any mounds in my rice. And it's a small amount of water, it's a small amount of rice, so it should come to a boil relatively quick. And for those that have gas at home, this will work real quick at home. You wait until the water starts to boil. It's at about a simmering point right now. I'm going to double check that it's not stuck. And just so you know, no matter how well you make sure it's not stuck, your final product will have rice stuck to the bottom. And I'll show you how to deal with that when we get there. So, you bring it up to a boil. It is now boiling. I am going to lower the heat as low as this will go. I am going to cover it. If you have a pan with a lid that's fit for it, use it. Otherwise, foil works. I'm going to put the oven on the lowest setting possible, or the stove on the lowest setting possible, and it now is going to start to steam. And everyone asks, the second question they always ask is, well, what is a cook time on that? For approximately 2 cups, we're talking 15-20 minutes worth of cook time. Obviously, the more rice, the longer the cook time. I did a large batch of rice for today that's already cooked, and that cook time on that was about 50 minutes. But you'll see, just cooking the rice isn't the end of the rice. There is another part to the rice. As this is steaming, and I'm going to gauge the clock and keep a mental note, because part of this process is heat on, very, very low heat. Part of the process is heat off. But both steps of the process, you don't uncover it. Once you uncover it, you almost have ruined the rice. So you do not want to uncover it. That's why I mentioned a tight seal lid would definitely help. The second part of this is a rice wine vinegar sugar solution that typically will get a pinch of salt as well. There's my sugar, and my salt is over here. They call this the sushi rice seasoning. Now, what's very, very convenient nowadays is that since this type of cuisine has caught on, you can find this pre-made for you. It's usually under the aisle that has the soy sauces. It has a lot of the product that I will introduce here a little bit. Most of the times all along the same wall at the grocery store. But if you're buying it pre-made, make sure that it does say some kind of sushi seasoning. If it's labeled rice wine vinegar, then that's exactly what it is. If it says sushi seasoning, then it's a mixture. What it is typically, and again, this is general rules of thumb. If depending on the sushi chef, you may get different answers. But I'm going to tell you about approximately equal parts vinegar to sugar with a pinch of salt. And for the small amount of rice I'm doing, I'm talking maybe a quarter to a half cup of each. So not a lot. Again, if you notice, cold pan. I'm going to go up. I wouldn't crank the heat because all you're really wanting to do is heat it up and dissolve the sugar. Because what's ultimately going to happen is this is going to flavor your rice. So I'm going to put my pinch of salt in there. And the good thing about this is that large batches can be made up in advance, and it's got an incredibly long shelf life. And sushi bars actually do that. They'll make gallons of it and store it. And how this process gets made is where you'll find differentiation. If you actually bought product from let's say a Japanese vendor that specialized in sushi products, you would find this seasoning in several different grades. And the gradation on it depends on two things: how sweet it is, how much sugar they've added, and how long cook time. And what that means is how long have they reduced it? How long have they let the sugars caramelize? Most sushi bars around here in the Midwest serve a sushi seasoning that has not been caramelized. And what that means is the sugar has simply been dissolved thoroughly. It's been brought up to a simmer and or boil and then cooled. That's it. However, again, depending on the chef, some chefs may tell you to simmer yours, or in fact even boil it and tell you the sugars start to color. The way I leave it with people is it's really up to you. And you'll see when it's done how much of it you actually add to the rice has a great big deal in it as well. So, to move on to the other product that you will find in the same aisles, you will find jarred pickled ginger, which comes in several different varieties, but I kept most of the containers. And this is ginger root that has been pickled. The coloring is literally food coloring because ginger is not that color. It's more a little pale yellow in color. And then wasabi, which I have formed quite a bit of it into a paste. Wasabi, 9 times out of 10, comes in powdered form and literally follow directions. You add water to turn it to a paste. You can find it already mixed. It comes almost like toothpaste tube-like, and it squeezes out. My experience is the premix is not nearly as hot. And for those that don't know what wasabi is more or less labeled Japanese horseradish. It is of the horseradish mustard family. And it's not that color either. There's been food coloring added to both of those products. Horseradish is white to pale yellow in color. I have brought this vinegar and oil solution to a boil. I'm going to just turn off heat. My rice is still cooking and it's still on heat. It's been on for approximately 5 minutes or so, and I'm gauging that because with a 10 to 15, maybe even possibly 20-minute cook time, I'm going to want to turn the heat off halfway through that process. So, in about 5 minutes, I'm going to turn that heat off. The other product we will see that you will be needing to get, if wanting to do this at home, is toasted seaweed. It's called nori, N-O-R-I. Grocery stores do sell seaweed that is not toasted. Do not buy it for sushi purposes, at least for not rolling sushi rolls. This is what you'll find. This is not toasted. It's actually a different kind of seaweed. It's kombu. This does not work. So you want to make sure the package says roasted or toasted on it. And what you'll find, this is a commercial package. What you'll find in retail is packets of 10 sheets. And conveniently, I cut them in half and demonstrate what I call half rolls. So if you buy a package of this, which has 10 of them in, you can estimate you can get approximately 20 rolls from it, depending on what you choose to do. There's some, I guess, maybe off the beaten path product. I have a Korean horseradish, or I'm sorry, a Korean radish. It is called lobak. It is very mild tasting as far as radishes go. I also have in package still, because it's pickled, I have a pickled daikon radish, which is completely different shape, but is also of the radish family, and this is a Japanese radish. This is pickled, this is fresh. I'm going to cut both of them up here in a second so that later on you can try and see what that is all about. Pickled vegetables are very, very, very popular in Asian cuisine. It's also extremely popular in sushi. So you will find takwon, which is pickled daikon radish. You will find that in sushi, particularly vegetable rolls. I'm going to grab some product that's been refrigerated. I've got a whole assortment of other things, but this is what I wanted to bring out. This is also pickled, and it looks like a little baby carrot. It is burdock root. It's pickled burdock root. It's called gobo in Japanese. Some people call it the Japanese carrot. This is indigenous, particularly to Japan and Southeast Asia, and even Northeast Asia as well. And you do find it a lot. If you've had an energy drink, look at the contents in there. You'll find burdock root used a lot, especially with the product advertises natural ingredients. You will find burdock a lot. The assortment of other things, I will show you why and how I cut it up here momentarily, but to introduce them real quick right now, I've got some asparagus that has been blanched. I've got very thinly sliced lemon. I have regular carrot, which is right here, that has been julienned. Well, it's been peeled, julienne, and blanched as well. I have cilantro. I have green onion cut up two ways, just in tubes and dice. I have cream cheese, which some people laugh at as far as sushi is concerned. It's definitely an American thing, but you find it a lot nowadays. So I have cream cheese and some jalapeno. I'm going to keep this refrigerated, and I will go into how I cut some of this stuff up and whether or not you need it to look that pretty, because that's another question I get asked. I don't have a really nice knife. I don't have any knife skills per se to do this kind of stuff at home, so therefore I'm just scared to do it. You don't need your knife cuts to look very, very pretty in the sense that it's going to go inside of a lot of rolls. Now, of course, for uniformity and for practice, I always encourage to get as uniform in your cuts as possible. But for instance, I'm going to start with the easy, with the pickled daikon root. It is pickled, which means it's going to be literally cooked. It's squishy. I'm going to cut julienne from it. In fact, I'm going to make my planks. And you'll find, if you're curious about trying this, a little bit does go a long way. If you are not a fan of pickled vegetables, then this tends to be on the very pungent side, whereas opposed to the burdock root is on the very mild side as far as flavor profile is concerned. Both product is pickled. But basically you're looking for anywhere between a bâtonnet and a julienne. Strips. If you're not a culinarian, you may just call them strips or ribbons. For instance. And same thing with the carrot. Now, if you saw how pretty that carrot looked, I did it on a mandolin. If you don't happen to have one of these at home, it's no big deal. But all I did was peel it. This is a nice slice dicer. It also juliennes. It's got a couple of different blades on it. And if you run the carrot down, your end product is what you saw. Again, a lot of people don't have this product. I did the cucumbers the same way. I peeled the cucumbers. Didn't include the seeds, and ran these along the mandolin as well to get the uniform cuts.